Start recording on the mixer in five, four, three.
Welcome to the Awakened Collective, where we explore the topics of love, spiritual consciousness, and our divine purpose on this planet. Join us as we uncover the truth that our thoughts shape our reality. Welcome to the Awakened Collective podcast. I'm Rick Gregory, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for joining us. And a special thank you to Audio Alchemy Productions and Daniel Anderson for the gift that they are to the world and giving us this opportunity to share our messages with so many people. Really good to be here today. And we have a sponsor this morning. So this is a first for me, but this episode of the Awakened Collective is brought to you by Cups, an espresso cafe here in central Mississippi. Their locations are in Jackson, Fondren, Flowood, Brandon, Madison, and Clinton. And not only do they have great coffee and you can make any kind of concoction you want, they have fruit drinks and teas and pastries. But you know what I like the most are the people that work there. The associates, the baristas, you go in there and you feel like you are home. So a big shout out to Ace and Scout, Cameron, Mary, Nathan, Becca, and so many more. You're like family, y'all, and I appreciate you. So give them a visit. You'll be glad you did. It's great stuff. Now, getting down to why we are here. And first and foremost, to remind you, as always, that you have never been separated from your Creator by whatever name you choose to call your Creator. We have never been separated from one another. You are the divine extension of your Creator's love on this planet. We are all connected at the source. Think of a bicycle wheel and all the spokes. The spokes are all the variations of all of us, and yet we are all connected there at the hub. I have a special guest with us this morning, and I am excited to introduce him. But let me say first that with this guy, I've done some inner work, and gotten in touch with my inner child. And let me just say that the inner child in me, the little kid in me, knows that he can rest his head on this guy's shoulder and experience love, kindness, safety, and compassion. And while we don't know each other super well, we are family. So I want to introduce to you my dear friend, Ted Adams. Welcome, Ted.
Thank you very much.
So glad to have you here. And I know some of your story. I've heard it. And I know our stories evolve and we fit pieces in here and there along the way. And sometimes I know I've given my story and I've left afterwards and said, oh crap, I should have talked about this and didn't. But it's hard to believe looking at where you are today, where you've come from and what you've been through. But I thought that perhaps you could share some of your memories of your journey that led you to this point, led you to where you are today. And the title of this podcast I chose was From Music to Medicine to Madness to Miracle. So maybe how drugs and alcohol started out as music for you. I know it did for me. I felt comfortable in my own skin. I felt invincible. I was the life of the party. And how it went to medicine, which I needed it to survive, and I think you can agree with that. And then it went to madness, the pitiful and incomprehensible, demoralization. I have to tell you a funny story, and I don't know if you've heard this before, but talking about madness. So towards the end of my drinking, I had landed a role as Daddy Warbucks and Annie in a college production of this show, and loved it, and spent months with the cast, and we got down to showtime, and our first weekend of shows, the Sunday matinee, and I drank for all of them. The Sunday matinee, I had a bottle of vodka in my dressing room. I think I had one in my pocket, for goodness sake. By the end of the show, it was pitiful and incomprehensible. I was swinging kids around in the last number like they were monkeys, like the orphans were being swung around. Like I had, at the end of the show, the director came up to me and he said, Rick, you need to go. And I was asked to leave. And talk about demoralization, all of these folks that had not counted on me. I mean, we all worked together and now someone had to come in and take my place. that was certainly the beginning of a turning point of me getting a chance to look at myself. So that was part of my madness. But then, as with you, it led to the miracle that suffering finally got me in the rooms. But as I said before we started, if the conversation goes in a completely different direction, it's fine. I choose to believe that it's because there's something else that needs to be said that someone needs to hear. And that's always a good thing. So we'll just let that happen. We are free to be. But before we start, I know this is a long intro. I want everyone, and if you're not on my Facebook page, you can get to it by going to my website at theawakencollective.org. All my social media is there, including all of our video productions of every podcast, the link to my YouTube channel, all of that is there. If you're listening via podcast and want to see some of the things that we put on the screen here and our guests as we share, but I want you to see this picture. This is what my guest looked like at one point in time. There he is. That's Ted. I don't know if that was at the music phase, the medicine phase, the madness phase, but we'll find out. So thanks for sharing that, Daniel. And I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend, Ted.
That picture was actually in sobriety.
Okay. That's good to know. Well, you know what? That's cool because one of my best friends in sobriety, I remember when he came in and he was there for a long time with, you might know him, but big blue ponytail sticking out the top of his head. So.
I don't know him. But yeah, that picture was actually in sobriety. I had that common thing, that uneasy feeling, you know. I was sure the world had a meeting every morning I wasn't invited to. There was just something missing, and it got stronger and stronger, just to the point where it irritated me. You know, what is it? What am I missing? It seemed like I was, you know, looking back at it today, it was like I was 19 and we were partying and having fun, and then, you know, I'm 40.
Wow. Yep.
And what all happened in between there, I get real vivid memories of that. But putting it all together, it's just a lot of nonsense, you know, looking back at decisions I made, I can't even fathom. But it ended with, 40 years old at my parents' and drinking vodka all day and using street drugs. I had built up and tore down several lives in that time. I was married, you know, we started out our adult lives and everything was going great. We were killing, you know, and what was a occasional Friday or Saturday night thing turned, you know, it just started to turn into an everyday thing, into the medicine. And that fell apart, you know. But there was a child involved, you know, we had a kid during the time. But it all ended up pretty garden variety, you know. The kids at grandma's, and I just stopped by and lied to him every once in a while.
Yeah.
He is a healthy, handsome, successful adult today. You know, and I couldn't be happier for that. But those things, like the real things that caused me to feel guilt and shame, gotten a little further away from them and a little further away from them. But in the beginning, it was like, you know, man, I couldn't even drive around my home, you know, Rankin County, Brandon, without getting all these feelings of guilt and shame in different places. And I was told to deal with those, just be grateful I wasn't there doing that. But, you know, got a little, in time, it became a gift.
Yeah.
You know, I've been through this. I came out of it. One of my favorite things to say is, I get to be a better everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I didn't know that was going to happen. You know, I didn't even believe that that was what was wrong with me, or this is how you fix it. I'm talking about the AA program.
Yeah.
one of the guys says something I love, this is going to work whether you believe it or not. And when I finally did that without adding any of my ideas or, my plans to it, it actually did work.
Yeah.
So,
So what were I'm just curious on your background on when it comes to the whole religious side of things when people come in, because I've lost a lot of folks that have come in and gotten to step 3 and have so much resentment towards church, and they were like, nope, no, thank you.
so much resentment towards church and just the word God. I would leave the rooms. I did leave the rooms just because of the word. I always say, if you hear something you don't like, hang around and talk to somebody about it.
Yeah.
Because my perspective of that and almost everything has changed. Yeah.
I've heard it said that the biggest block to finding God is the concept of God, because there's so many, and so many of us. I mean, where do we get our concepts from? It's from our upbringing, from our parents, whatever. I remember as a kid, just I wanted to know who this God was. And I grew up Catholic, so, it was all the ritualistic kinds of things. I remember having a priest come to my house so that I could say my, first act of contrition or whatever it was, the prayer that I had to have memorized it. I think it was 7 or 8 before I could get my first Holy Communion. And, that you walk into these churches with all the stained glass and everybody in their robes. I mean, you're collecting information, and then you get to be an adult and you realize that you have learned some shit that isn't even true, that you need to now unlearn. So yeah, I get that. I came in thinking, I've got this. I pastor a church. I know all this stuff. Let's move on. My sponsor was like, no, we're gonna slow down. I'm like, this is like riding a bike. I could do this. And my concept, my understanding of God is my own today. And certainly, I have family members that are very religious and very, still believe the way that I used to believe. And I think may struggle with the way I believe things today.
The concept of a God of your understanding went right over my head when I decided, okay, I'm gonna do this. I have to do this. So I set out to box God up. Found a pastor I loved, super cool guy. I believed he believed what he was saying, and we started going to church.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of crashed and burned on that, after almost 4 years, relapsed. And it was my longest of 3 relapses. And I burned it all down. We had bought a house, got married, these things. And as always, in my life, I put alcohol and drugs over everything.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I didn't have a big religious experience. We went to church when we lived in South Texas. It was a Greek Orthodox church. So it was literally in Greek. It was very theatrical.
Greek to me.
It was really cool, looking back at it. And it was a lot of fun, but I didn't put it together with a religious experience or God. We were just kids. But I did have a lot of resentment and towards religion and God and all that. I would sit and I would cuss God. If you made this, you did it wrong. You need to come back and fix it. While I'm sitting wherever it was I was sitting, drinking cheap warm beer, whatever was going on.
Yeah.
But I started out with something a lot more simpler this time. The difference of right and wrong. I had daydreamed about being a good person. What would that be like? Do I need a suit? What do you do?
Yeah.
So somebody said this to me, and it was really deep for me. Is what if everybody in the world did the right thing for the right reason for 10 minutes?
A different world.
There'd be ripples of that for a decade. And I was like, crowd,
Yeah.
man. I can get on board with that. So I started out like that, praying to do just good and right, and
Yeah.
I'm open for that to evolve into whatever it evolves to. I want to be a part of good. Yeah.
That's at the end, I think I mentioned this to you before, but when that intention was set, when you said, so what would it be like? And that desire to want to find out what this good person, I just think, I've seen it in my own life. It's like it all starts with intention. And then, it seems like the universe just delivers. And if we have eyes to see it, we grab onto it. I remember, and I want to hear about what led, actually, before we get to so what you mentioned relapses. So what led to them, if you don't mind me asking? Was it the typical, like, just stop going to meetings, or?
It was very garden variety.
Okay.
I'm going to the same meeting. Any other meetings I go to, they're doing it wrong. This is, no, mine closed shut. I also brought my ego into my recovery. Like I had invented recovery and buying a home and raising your kids. It was and also the God thing. I kind of crashed and burned on that, and quit going to meetings.
Yeah.
Quit working my program. Quit communicating with my sponsor. It was very garden variety. That I can see that now. I couldn't then. And it started out with a drink. I'm a grown man. I've just worked a 10-hour day. I can have a glass of bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't.
Oh, no, you can't. Yeah, we find out the hard way.
Yeah. So the experiment is successful. I have a glass of bourbon. A month later, I'm probably going to be in a hotel room on the frontage road.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that leads me.
Yeah. I didn't get sober until I was, 39, I think. And I really didn't start my drinking career until later, because I was very busy, raising. I was totally self-absorbed and all, very egocentric for sure, looking back. And it was starting when I decided that it was time for me to get honest. I had pastored a church for a number of years. I was married, I had kids, and I knew from the age of 5 that I was gay, and had an issue with God over that, and back in the 60s and 70s, it was not something you could really talk about. I remember telling my wife before we were married that I was more attracted to men than women, but we both believed in the church that God was going to fix me. And so it was a journey of waiting for that to happen. And it came to the point that, I was like, if God must love me the way I am, and this was, I've got to, I cannot live this bifurcated. I felt like my brain was going to explode. I've got to be my authentic self. And I started drinking because that seemed to ease the shame, and left the pastorate, separated, met the first love of my life after the divorce from my wife. I was married Kevin, and he was in the program. I was an alcoholic, and he was a drug and alcohol counselor in a rehab facility. But he had a work-related injury and had a prescription for Percocet and been on it for years, and no problem. But it could have been, now looking back, it could have been my drinking that caused him to start taking more than he needed to be taking. And he passed away in his sleep one night of an accidental overdose. And that's when my drinking really took off, and I hit that bottom. And thankfully, someone got me into the program, and I managed to do it. And I stayed sober for 2.5 years, but I got into a toxic relationship, left my state of Massachusetts to Mississippi, and thought, man, this is as good as life is going to get. I might as well just go back to drinking. And the guy that I came here with was drinking, and it was downhill from there. I didn't think life could get any better. Surprise, surprise. Life is amazing today. And it's been, for me now, it's been 5.5 years, and can't even put words to what life is like today. And it certainly back then was not as good as it was going to get. And I just didn't know.
5.5 years of sobriety.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right there. 5 years and 3 months
Yeah.
now.
So what month was it for you?
I can't remember. June 7th.
Okay.
Yeah. It's I always feel like when I'm talking about this, like it's like I'm making myself like I was a bad person, and I'm a great person until alcohol and drugs are,
Yeah.
but without learning the things I've learned through the AA program, I didn't know about ego and all that, I'm a bad person when you add alcohol and drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the kind of person that'll steal from his mom or abandon my children. But if you add alcohol and drugs, I'll eventually do
All bets are
those
off.
things.
Yeah.
I had a great childhood. My parents were great. I thought they knew what they were doing. Now that I'm 55 and have been a parent, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I do get to be a better parent as a result of this. It's a byproduct. But I had all the opportunities, and most of the things I wanted. And, but I had that feeling, that uneasy, I call it a spiritual malady now, because that's what I've learned it was. And alcohol fixed it.
Mm-hmm.
It made me feel better. And I had some my brother and cousins and uncles, they were cool. My understanding from the other adults is they were bad guys. I was like, so bad guys are cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I set out to be a bad guy, I wasn't that tough, and I was full of fear. So, it says it in our literature, image that we know we don't deserve. We're not living up to.
Yeah.
So, it's all so texty. All of it's in there, I couldn't see it when I first started, war fever ran high, and then I was like, what does this have to do with me?
Yes.
But over the years and learning about the malady and the disease, that was another thing that drove me out of the room. I don't have a disease, whatever you want to call it. I've got it.
Yeah.
And some guys 80 years ago figured out how I can get through the day, and thrive and have a beautiful life.
Yes. I know some of the language back when it was written in the 30s is it's a little bit much. It was a different world back then.
Yeah.
And, when you were saying too about the shame and the guilt, it can keep us stuck. We all you said you came in with your ego. We all came in, we still are here with our ego. It is a daily process. And there's I think I do a lot of other reading as well. And I read a lot of this guy, Dr. Hawkins. You hear me mention him a lot on this podcast, but he had this one of the things he said that really hit home with me was, he said, we feel like the alcohol and drugs are filling that void, like you said. It's meeting that need where all of a sudden we're comfortable in our own skin and we feel good, and the guilt and the shame are lessened or gone while we're in those states. And he said it's not actually the drugs and alcohol that are doing that. The drugs and alcohol, and he talks about this, it's the levels of consciousness, and at the very bottom levels of consciousness are guilt and shame and anger and apathy and things like that. And then you move up the scale to love and unconditional love, and all the way up to enlightenment. But he said those lower things on the scale are just being covered up by the alcohol and the drugs. And so therefore you're able to experience things that are higher on the scale of consciousness. And what if you could do the work to deal with those things on the lower end of the of consciousness, so that you could live in that place without the sickness of what alcohol and drugs does to us physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
I was thinking about it this morning. It's just to be enough. It's so nice just to be enough, and to be say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Where did I lose that? To not be able to say I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is nice to be enough and to be comfortable. And to even enjoy awkwardness.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself doing that. It's like, wow, it's a trip.
And facing it head on like you're doing today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like that.
I was thinking too about raising kids, and one of the other things I was reading recently in serious conversations with God was about the family structure and how, as kids, we don't know how to raise children. I mean, I got married at 22. I think I had 3 children by the time I was 28. I did grow up in a wonderful family, but at the same time we had our issues, and there was alcoholism and all kinds of craziness going on. And here I had a spiritual experience at 19, um, where I was in 2 car accidents 2 weeks in a row and totaled 2 vehicles, my mother's father's. No cars left in the house. And a friend of mine who I partied with all the time invited me to a Bible study. Now, my brother had left the Catholic Church to become Baptist and become a born again Christian, and was telling us all that we needed what he had, and I didn't want anything to do with it. And so here my friend is that I partied with all the time now inviting me to a Bible study, and I'm like, crap, what is going on with my world here? And I didn't want to go, but after those accidents, I decided that I was gonna just check it out, because I'm thinking, what if I died? Is there life after this? I had all those questions as a kid, and I went and heard about this God for the first time that was very different than what I was raised with, one who loved me unconditionally and forgave me and all of the good things. And I went home that night, and I was so excited. And I remember coming in, I was actually emotional. So came into the house very emotional. And my mom was like, what did you destroy now? Because 2 weeks in a row I came home crying because of car accidents. And now I'm like, I think I found God tonight, Mom. And my brother hears it, and he came out and had asked, he's like, where did this happen? And I said, at a little Bible study at a karate school hall up the street. Well, I think that was all he needed to hear. I mean, they had rented space in this karate hall, but in his head, probably of mine too, would be like, oh my God, this is not anything good. You're in a cult, is what he said to me. And I was like, man, how we just pull this information in, and we immediately start believing that it could be. And I'm thinking, what if I am in a cult? What if this is a cult? And I went into my bedroom and sat on the bed, really upset that I was like, what have I done? And this thought came in, and it was like telepathic. I can't explain it any other way, because I was not thinking this crap up. And I was sitting there, and I heard this: see how much you love me already, that you'd be this upset to think you lost me. And I felt peace. But man, I was 19, Ted. It took me until I was 50 to finally, get it. It was a long journey, but everything played a part along the way, and nothing was ever wasted. And I don't know if you can see that in your own life.
I've had some things like that where I've gotten a message, I was driving to the coast one time, and I started the hydroplane, and I'm doing the wheel back and forth, slamming on the brakes, and it's just in my ears, like, let go of everything. And I did. And the truck straightened out. It was crazy. And I've gotten a few others like that, more recently is, what if Ray was watching? That's my beautiful 7-year-old with bright blue eyes and blonde lockets,
Gorgeous child.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's something. And another one's not to leave where I'm at. I'm supposed to be exactly where I'm at, way out in the middle of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And our grandmama's out there, and we've got dogs, and I've got it's a family of 5. I've got a brother and sister, an older brother and a younger sister, and I'm the only alcoholic addict of the 5. There's a lot of it in our family on both sides. But I'm the only one of our immediate family that took it that far.
But look at what you bring to the family as a result.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Amazing.
And because everybody needs it. You know what I mean? Whether they're alcoholic or not. And that was one of the reasons for starting this podcast, is because I was like, man, my life has gotten so much better. This is, and even Hawkins talks about the 12 steps. He was actually a physician to Bill W. in the hospital. And he's, he talks about the 12s, the level of consciousness in a 12-step meeting is pretty high up there, because it's a bunch of people getting together, willing to look at themselves. And there aren't a lot of people that are doing that or even know to do it.
Yeah.
And the work that gets done when you do that and the difference you can make in your family as a result.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of my resentment, or I can't think of the word towards religion and the church. Me and my sponsor were sitting at a meeting, one of my favorite meetings, and he was telling me about, you get a room full of people with a set of principles in a book, and they're all trying to learn and live by them. He's like, look around here. It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of helped me with that, get over that and let go of that. It's nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is for me to be resentful or have a animosity towards
Yeah.
religion or a group of people trying to live by a set of
Right.
principles, no matter what they believe.
Right.
I've actually been jealous of friends that were strong Christians, and I believed they believed because I wanted to believe.
Yeah.
I just couldn't.
I mean, it saved my life for a long period of time, because if it were not for me being so involved for decades in church, I don't know where I would be today, because I mean, I grew, I mean, it was in the 80s. It was during the AIDS epidemic. And if I had followed whatever passions were there at the time, and didn't have any kind of restraint, I don't know where I would be today if I'd even be alive. So everything serves a purpose. And I think just it's constant change and constant evolution as we just keep growing, through our life. And I remember starting to talk about having 3 kids at 28. And one of the things I envy about you is that you've got a young one now, and you're doing the work, and she gets to benefit from that. My kids got no benefit at all. And I see that today. And I was reading recently about how, like I said, kids have kids. And then, they're not equipped to even be able to raise them, because they're not even aware of themselves. And it takes sometimes until your 40s, maybe even 50, before you even have some semblance of wisdom to be able to raise a child. And that's why so often the grandparents are involved with their wisdom in helping to raise children, while the parents get their acts together,
I was telling Connor, he's my 24-year-old. He's in San Diego. Ray gets the good dad. He said, that's okay as long as she does, and I have 2 stepchildren.
Okay.
That I'm dad. I'm the dad that's been in their lives, and that's been such a gift. My daughter turned 19. She's brilliant and beautiful, and
Just saw her picture. She is beautiful.
So I get the gift of being her dad, and I have a stepson who I'm also dad. I've always got to be dad. I got to raise him, and there was a lot of ups and downs, but in the end, for the last 5 years and 3 months, he gets to have a good dad, not drinking and using dope and disappearing. But I was in and out of both their lives a lot like that. Me and their mother had my beautiful wife, their mother.
Yes.
And but we have the 7-year-old. She's our child together. So I had a 7-year-old when I was 48, which is cool.
I'm glad for the 7-year-old, but I don't think I would have wanted to be in that boat because she gets a wonderful dad. It's amazing. It really is. It's a good life, and I wouldn't want to trade it. And I've said many times that if I had written down on a piece of paper 10 years ago and was told that whatever you write on this paper, you'll get to have your life be, I would have sold myself short.
Way short.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time, and I'm always like, yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. I do get pictures of my life in front of me, and I'm blown away. I'm just eaten up with gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, wow, this is so great. It's like a second skin,
Mm-hmm.
I get to start over, do it again, another chance. A lot of chances.
Yes. And with this journey, it's, we get a new chance every day, every 24 hours, and that's all we got. And learning how to just stay in that moment and not be getting into morbid reflection of the
Oh.
past or worrying about the future or any of that. It's all I get is today. And like I said, I would not have known to ask for what's in my life today. So obviously there is a power greater than me at work that has known my heart all along. Because the things I have in my life are everything I never knew I wanted. And yet they are everything I want.
Yeah.
What an amazing way to live.
Right.
It's a gift.
The promises, that was something in the beginning. I was like, okay, you kooks believe in magic, you know?
Yeah.
And to hang around long enough to experience some of that magic is awesome.
I want to grab my phone because I would love to read those. And again, you know, it's like I wish everyone could have the gift of and if you're not an alcoholic or an addict out there and but you have some other ism, because I mean there are 12-step groups for, I mean I saw one recently for clutterers. I mean they're out there, whatever you can do to get your hands on a group of folks, because it's about community. You really, because I don't know about you, Ted, but I isolated. I was like on a little sand hill in the middle of an ocean, didn't want anything to do with anybody for the longest time. And it's totally different today. And it started with getting involved in a community of people who really wanted to look at themselves. Made all the difference in the world. But there was one of these promises I remember when I first heard them, I was like, the part about we'll be amazed before we're halfway through.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's halfway through? I want to know what halfway is. What's halfway? And, you know, some people said, well, it's the steps of the program. Or I'm like, I don't. And I had where I was at that point in my journey, it's like, it has been so amazing. I don't ever want to get halfway through. You know, I don't want it to be done. It was funny.
Well, when they said more will be revealed, I felt like they were holding something they could have gave me that night.
Yeah.
I really did. I was like, you know, how many dollars do I have to put in this basket before that's revealed? You know,
Yes.
what's the angle here, buddy? You know, the way I'd been living,
Yeah.
there was always an angle.
It's the you know, it's the condition. We're all conditioned. You know, we grow up and we're sponges and we want information and we learn and we grow. And it's, you know, we're conditioned through everything, through society, through the media, through our teachers, through pastors, preachers, and then, you know, it's not until I think at some point in our lives, I begin to say, wait a minute, I've held on to that belief that has never sat right with my gut, but because someone smarter than me, you know, more spiritual than me said so, I've been trying to force fit this square peg into a round hole, and it doesn't resonate with me. And learning that I can live with what resonates with me today, you know, that is so freaking freeing.
Like just absorbing the world, you know, in a different way. I could not absorb the world. Seems like.
Yeah. Do you use reading glasses?
I do.
Okay, I was going to ask you to read this, but it's even small for me, and I'm wearing glasses. So this is the promises of our recovery program. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. There it is. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. The feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises, Ted? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but they'll always materialize if we work for them.
They feel pretty extravagant.
Mm-hmm. it was just there's one of them here that really, gosh, they all. I think every one of these I have experienced. The big one though for me there is just no matter how far down the scale we've gone, I've seen in my life that absolutely everything. I mean, it's amazing when I could be sitting with someone who's in the program helping someone and intuitively a memory of some sort, something that someplace I was, something I did, can be used to benefit that person.
Yeah,
Blows
absolutely.
my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Blows my mind. Well, I want to thank you for being here today, Ted. Do you have any final words?
No, thanks for having me.
I
It's
really
a lot of
enjoyed
fun.
it. And I want to remind folks how they can reach out to me. My website is our guest will be John Glavin. And John is one of my top contributors on my Facebook page and is just really writing some cool stuff. And I want to get to know him better. I want to hear his story. So you'll get to hear his story too. And that's going to be on the 20th. So I will not be here next week. I will be recovering from meniscus surgery. Can't wait to get that behind me. I'm excited about that. Thank you for joining us today. As always, love and kindness to you until we see you again.